The first stirring of ancient memories came not as a flash or a vision, but as a faint pulse in the back of their minds, like the echo of a faraway voice just out of reach. It was nothing significant at first, just an uneasy feeling that left them looking over their shoulder in the middle of a crowded room, or pausing for a moment in the middle of a conversation, wondering what they had just forgotten. It was the same for everyone, an odd sensation, like the world had shifted imperceptibly, like something had changed. But they couldn't quite put their finger on it. It wasn't until the dreams began that they realized the truth. For months, Emma had been waking up in cold sweats, her heart pounding, the lingering sensation of something unfinished clinging to her. It wasn't the usual kind of dream where you wake up, shake it off, and move on. These dreams felt different, vivid, and real, as though they were not just memories, but something deeper, something long buried. She stood in the center of a vast cityscape. Towering spires stretched toward a sky that wasn't quite right, a color that didn't exist anywhere in the natural world. The streets were lined with impossible structures, strange and beautiful, yet utterly familiar. She felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, like she had been here before, but when she tried to focus on any detail, it slipped away from her like water through her fingers. The faces of people around her were blurry, their voices muted, but the energy of the place had hummed with an intensity she couldn't explain. It called to her. Emma had tried to dismiss it, writing it off as a result of stress, or perhaps some lingering trauma. But it happened again and again, each time the dream growing more intense, more vivid, until she could no longer ignore it. And then, one morning, she woke with a start and immediately knew that this was something she couldn't brush aside. The truth, if it could even be called, that was beginning to surface. She wasn't alone in this. Her best friend, Alex, had been having similar dreams, though neither of them dared speak of it at first. The world had long since abandoned its mysteries. History had been written, the galaxy had been charted, and humanity, for all its apparent chaos and division, had accepted the order of things. There was nothing to fear, nothing to discover, or so they had been taught. But that was before the dreams started, before the pulse of something ancient began to stir beneath the surface of their collective consciousness. Now, Emma could see it in the way people acted, the way they looked at each other, as though they were all sensing something but couldn't quite understand it. And when they gathered, in hushed voices, they would admit what they felt, a sense of déjà vu, a feeling of being drawn to something long forgotten. At first, it was small, a few strange occurrences here and there. Someone would hum a melody they couldn't remember learning, or an artist would sketch a city they had never seen but somehow knew intimately. People started to look at the stars more often, as if the vast expanse above them held the answers they couldn't articulate. But it wasn't until they began to talk to each other, to compare notes, that the full scope of what was happening began to unfold. It was Alex who first brought it up, cautiously, like he was testing the waters. "Do you ever get the feeling that there's something we're not supposed to know? Something they've kept from us?" he asked, his voice low, as if afraid someone might overhear. They were sitting in a small cafe, one of the few remaining places that didn't have screens everywhere, that still felt like a relic of a time long past. Emma looked at him, her expression unreadable. She had been thinking the same thing, but admitting it aloud felt like crossing an invisible line. "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning ignorance, though the weight of his question hung between them like a fog. Alex leaned in closer, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know. It's like I'm forgetting something important. Something that's been erased. And the more I think about it, the more it feels like the whole world's been wiped clean, and we're just going through the motions, pretending everything's normal." Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. The sensation was the same. The feeling of something lost, something hidden from them. The echoes of a past they weren't supposed to remember. "What if we're not supposed to know?" she said quietly, a shiver running down her spine. Alex nodded, his gaze intense. "That's what I'm saying. What if there's a reason we're all feeling this way? Like we've been kept in the dark for so long that now that we're starting to wake up, it's too much for the universe to handle. Emma swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together on the table. The conversation was making her more anxious than she had expected, but there was also a part of her that felt an undeniable sense of urgency. Whatever was happening, whatever they were starting to uncover, it wasn't just a coincidence, it was a sign. They had been kept in the dark for a reason, and now, for the first time in their lives, they were beginning to see the cracks in the facade. "We need to find out what's going on," she said, her voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at her. "Whatever it is, we have to remember all of it." As they left the cafe, Emma felt a weight pressing down on her, the feeling of being on the cusp of something monumental. The world outside seemed unchanged, the bustling city streets full of people going about their daily routines. But in the back of her mind, a voice was growing louder, urging her forward. The dream, the city, the strange hum of energy that vibrated in her bones. It was all connected, and somehow they were meant to uncover it. But as she walked alongside Alex, the first sliver of truth began to surface. The universe had one law, and they had just broken it. They had remembered. It had been a week since the conversation at the cafe. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted within her. She had expected the sense of unease to fade, but instead, it grew stronger each day, gnawing at the edges of her consciousness like an itch she couldn't quite reach. The dreams didn't help either, if anything. They were growing more vivid, more intense. At night, when the world was quiet and her mind could wander, she found herself back in the strange city from her visions. The streets were darker now, and the faces of the people were beginning to clear. She could see them in detail's sharp features, eyes that seemed to pierce through her. But there was something else. She could feel their emotions, their collective fear. They knew something she didn't. They knew the truth, and they were desperate to keep it hidden. The more she experienced these dreams, the more she began to understand that they weren't just random flashes of imagination. They were memories or fragments of them. Fragments of something ancient, something powerful. Alex had been quieter than usual, distracted. She could see it in the way he looked at the stars, as if they were calling to him in a way that he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just him, though. There was something in the air, a tension building among their group of friends. Some were talking more frequently about the dreams, trying to make sense of them, but others were growing fearful, pulling away, afraid of what they might uncover. One afternoon, as Emma was leaving work, she received a message from Alex. "We need to talk. Meet me at the park at midnight." The urgency in his words was unlike anything she'd heard from him before. He'd always been calm, collected, the type of person who weighed every word before speaking. But now, there was a sense of desperation creeping into his messages, something Emma couldn't ignore. She arrived at the park just after midnight, the streets eerily empty. The trees loomed like dark sentinels, casting long shadows in the moonlight. Emma's footsteps were muffled by the thick grass beneath her feet. She scanned the area for Alex, but he wasn't there. Her phone buzzed, and she checked the screen, expecting another message. "Look up." Her heart skipped a beat. She instinctively tilted her head, and that's when she saw him standing on the roof of a nearby building, silhouetted against the night sky. It was an impossible position to be in, without a ladder or some other means of ascent. Yet there, he was calm as ever, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite place. "How did you?" Emma started to shout, but she stopped herself, realizing it didn't matter how. All that mattered was what Alex wanted to say, what he wanted her to understand. He waved, then disappeared from sight. Emma didn't wait. She ran toward the building, her feet moving faster than she thought possible. It took only a few minutes to reach the entrance, and once inside, she found the stairs leading to the rooftop. She climbed them two at a time, her breath quickening with every step. When she reached the roof, Alex was waiting for her, leaning casually against the edge. He didn't seem surprised to see her, but there was a darkness in his eyes that unsettled her. He looked like someone who had seen something he couldn't forget. "Alex, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to keep it steady. He took a deep breath and gestured for her to sit beside him. "I don't know how to explain this, but I think we're not supposed to remember. Not like this." "What do you mean?" Emma's pulse quickened. The tension between them was palpable now. It was as if they were on the edge of something far bigger than either of them could comprehend. Alex turned his gaze to the stars above, his eyes searching for something in the vast expanse of space. "I've been seeing things, images of places, people. I've been trying to ignore them, but they're too real. I can't stop thinking about it. This isn't our world. We were never supposed to know what's out there, what we were. Alex, ... Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "You're scaring me." "I'm not crazy," he said quickly, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed the fear he was trying to hide. "I'm not the only one feeling this, Emma. It's all of us. Everyone who's had these dreams, this ... memory. We're starting to remember things we shouldn't know." Emma's mind raced. Could it be true? Were they really beginning to uncover something so massive, so world-altering, that the universe itself had intervened to erase it from their consciousness? "I don't know what's happening," Alex continued, his voice raw now, "but whatever it is, it's bigger than us. I've started doing some research, talking to people who aren't as afraid to ask questions as we are. What I found ... it's not just ancient history, it's something much older than that. And I think the universe has been trying to hide it from us for a long time." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What did you find?" Alex turned to her, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "I found out who we were before Earth. I found out why they erased us." She took a step back, her mind struggling to process the magnitude of his words. Before Earth. The idea felt wrong, impossible. But as she looked into Alex's eyes, she saw the certainty there, the knowledge that he wasn't making this up. Double quotes, "Alex, ... She whispered again, her voice shaky. "Who were we?" He shook his head slowly. "I don't know everything yet, but I think we're the last of them. The ones who were meant to rule the stars. And something didn't want us to remember." Emma felt the ground beneath her feet seem to shift, as though the very fabric of reality was warping. The stars above them no longer seemed distant. They felt like a map, one that had been hidden from them for too long, and now they were starting to see it. Alex's next words were the ones that would haunt her forever. "We're waking up, Emma, and the universe is scared." The following days were a blur, a strange mixture of disjointed moments, sleepless nights, and thoughts that seemed to circle back on themselves. Emma couldn't stop thinking about what Alex had said, couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something world-changing. It was as if the universe itself was watching them, waiting for them to take the next step. But what could they do? Alex had hinted at something ancient, something hidden beneath the surface of everything they knew. And now Emma found herself on the edge of an abyss, unsure if she should leap or turn away. She couldn't turn away. It was in the quiet moments, late at night, when the city was still and the hum of everyday life seemed distant, that the truth began to seep into her consciousness. The more she thought about Alex's words, the more she tried to wrap her mind around them, the more a terrible clarity set in. They had been kept in the dark. Their memories, their history, their identity, everything had been wiped clean, and now they were starting to see through the veil. But who had done it? Who had erased their past, and why? Emma was determined to find the answers. She spent the next few days digging through old archives, scouring online records, and talking to anyone who would listen. But the deeper she went, the more the walls seemed to close in. There were gaps in the history, strange contradictions, places and people that had simply vanished without explanation, files that had been classified for decades, articles that had been mysteriously redacted or erased. It didn't make sense. She met up with Alex again, this time in a small, hidden cafe at the edge of the city. The kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. The kind of place where the walls could whisper secrets. "Have you found anything?" she asked, slipping into the seat across from him. Alex was quieter than usual, his fingers tapping restlessly on the table. He seemed distracted, as if his mind were miles away, but when he looked up at her, his eyes were filled with determination. "I've found something," he said, his voice low. "But it's not what I expected." Emma leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" "I've been digging into the ancient records," Alex continued, lowering his voice even further. "There are references to someone who once existed before humanity, before Earth. And from what I've found, they didn't just erase us. They replaced us." "Replaced?" Emma repeated, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, replaced?" Alex paused, glancing around as if making sure no one was listening. "There's a theory. It's old, buried under layers of secrecy, but I think it's real. We weren't always humans, not the way we think of ourselves. We were something different, something much more powerful, and the beings that erased us didn't just try to hide our past, they tried to suppress it entirely. They replaced us with a new species, one that wouldn't remember." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "But how? How could they erase an entire species' history?" "I don't know," Alex admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I think we're starting to remember, because something's going wrong. Something's breaking down. The universe isn't holding together the way it should." The thought of something as massive as the universe itself beginning to crack open felt almost impossible to grasp. It was too much to take in, but Emma could sense the gravity of what Alex was saying. She could feel it, deep in her bones. "So, you're saying we're not just human?" Emma asked softly. "That we were something else before?" Alex nodded slowly. "Yes. And I think no. I know we're starting to wake up. We're remembering what we were. The question is, why? Why now? And what happens when we remember everything?" Emma's mind was spinning, and yet there was something undeniably powerful in Alex's words. This wasn't just a personal journey for them anymore. It wasn't just about finding answers. It was about understanding who they really were, and what that meant for the world around them. "So, what do we do now?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to find others," Alex said, leaning forward. "There are more of us. People who have been having the same dreams, the same visions. They're out there, scattered all over the world. But we have to find them before it's too late." "Before what's too late?" Emma asked, her heart pounding. Alex's face darkened. "Before the universe catches up with us. Before whatever force has been keeping us hidden decides to finish the job." The weight of his words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. She had always thought the universe was vast, indifferent, just a backdrop to the lives of billions of humans, living out their existence. But now, she was starting to see it differently. The universe wasn't indifferent. It was watching. It had been watching them for a long time. As they spoke, Emma's mind began to race. If Alex was right, if they weren't really human, if they had once been something far more ancient, far more powerful, then what did that make them now? And why had they been erased in the first place? The answers felt just out of reach, like a key hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. But as she looked into Alex's eyes, she saw the same mixture of fear and determination that had been growing inside her. They were starting to wake up, and once they had, there was no going back. The first pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, but the truth was more terrifying than either of them had imagined. The universe had one rule: never let them remember. And it was beginning. to crack under the weight of that rule. Emma didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure: they weren't going to stop. Not until they had the answers. Not until they knew who they really were. And they were going to have to hurry, because whatever force had erased them wasn't going to let them get away with it. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of suspension time, dragging on, yet moving far too quickly at the same time. Emma couldn't help but feel like the world around her was changing, shifting beneath her feet, even though nothing looked any different. People still went about their lives, stuck in their routines, oblivious to the secret they were all about to uncover. But Emma and Alex weren't like the others anymore. They had started to wake up, and they could feel the weight of it pressing down on them every moment. It wasn't just the dreams now. It was the feeling of something ancient, something forgotten, clawing its way to the surface. They couldn't push it away anymore, not with the same ease they once had. No matter how much they tried to go about their normal lives, the past was there hanging over them, like a shadow that wouldn't let them go. Emma had been receiving cryptic messages, ones that seemed to be sent from nowhere. No sender, number, return address. The first one had simply read, "You're not alone. Don't trust what you see." The second had followed the next day. "They are watching. They know you remember." At first, Emma had thought it was a prank, a cruel joke from someone who knew about the dreams she and Alex had been having. But there was no denying the feeling in the pit of her stomach, the sense that the messages were real, that they were connected to whatever was happening to them, whatever was breaking loose in the universe. It was clear that whoever was sending them wanted them to take action. But what that action was, Emma couldn't yet say. They needed answers, and Alex was determined to find them. "I think it's time," Alex said one afternoon, as they sat in the dimly lit corner of a small, nearly abandoned library, the kind of place that hadn't changed in decades, with rows of dusty books and the thick scent of old paper filling the air. "I've found a lead." Emma looked at him, her curiosity piqued. "A lead?" "Yes," Alex replied, nodding gravely. "There's a place, a location where some of the oldest records are kept. It's not just a library or a government archive. It's a facility, hidden deep underground. I think it's where they keep the truth." The mention of an underground facility sent a chill through Emma. She had suspected that there were still secrets the world didn't want her to know, but she hadn't realized just how far the conspiracy went. A facility buried deep beneath the surface, holding records so sensitive they had to be hidden away from the public. Whatever it was they were dealing with, it was much bigger than either of them had imagined. Emma swallowed hard, trying to steady the rising panic in her chest. "How do you know about this place?" "I've been piecing things together from the ancient texts and encrypted messages I've found," Alex explained, his voice low, his eyes scanning the library as if someone might be listening. "It's an old installation, one that was shut down after the last major conflict, but I think it still exists, buried beneath the mountains in a remote area. If we can get in, we can find out everything. We can learn who we really are." Emma felt a spark of hope and fear ignite inside her. "And if we don't get in, what happens then?" Alex's gaze darkened. "Then the truth stays buried, and the people who erased us, they'll make sure we never remember again." The weight of his words settled heavily in Emma's chest. She didn't know if she was ready for whatever lay ahead, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. They had started this journey, and they couldn't stop until they uncovered the full truth. "We need to go," she said, her voice firm. "We need to find this place." Alex's expression softened, and for a moment, Emma could see the exhaustion on his face, the toll this quest for the truth was taking on him. But he nodded in agreement. "It won't be easy. The facility is protected. It's been hidden for a reason. But if we can get in, if we can get past the security, we can finally uncover what's been hidden from us," Emma finished. For him, the determination in her voice matching his own, they both stood up, ready to leave the library, and begin their journey toward the unknown. They didn't have all the answers yet, but they were closer than ever. They just needed to take one more step. The drive to the facility took hours, with the sky turning from dusk to night as they made their way into the mountains. The closer they got, the more the tension in the car mounted. Emma could feel it, a pressure building in her chest. What were they walking into? What would they find? The facility, as Alex had said, was deep beneath the mountains. Surrounded by dense forest and rocky terrain, it looked like just another remnant of a forgotten time, a place no one had cared to remember. But the truth was buried here, hidden beneath the layers of secrecy. When they arrived at the entrance, it was exactly as Alex had described, a nondescript door set into the side of the mountain, blending seamlessly with its surroundings. To anyone else, it would have been invisible, a featureless part of the landscape. But to Alex, to Emma, it was the key to everything. "We're here," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma glanced at him, her heart racing. "Now what?" Alex stepped forward, pulling a small device from his pocket. He attached it to a hidden panel beside the door, his fingers working quickly. The device beeped softly, and with a low rumble, the entrance slowly slid open, revealing a dark, narrow passageway leading down into the earth. "This is it," Alex said, turning to her. His expression was unreadable, but Emma could see the uncertainty in his eyes. Despite the confidence he tried to project, Emma took a deep breath and stepped forward. She didn't know what they would find inside, but she knew this was the only way forward. They had broken the law of the universe by remembering. Now, they had to face the consequences. Together, they entered the darkened tunnel, the door closing silently behind them. And as they descended into the depths, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was holding its breath, waiting for them to find the truth. The tunnel stretched out before them, dark and unyielding, the faint hum of machinery vibrating through the walls. It felt as though the world above had been left far behind, swallowed up by the mountains that towered over them. Each step echoed, in the silence, the sound hollow and distant, as if they were walking into the heart of something ancient, something forgotten. Emma's breath came out in soft clouds as she and Alex moved deeper into the facility. The air was cold, stiflingly so, and carried the scent of old stone and metal. The passageway twisted and turned, an impossible labyrinth that seemed to go on forever. Alex led the way, his movements confident, despite the uncertainty that hung between them. He had done the research. He knew where they were headed, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. For all the certainty Alex had shown, they were venturing into the unknown. Every piece of information, every fragment of knowledge, had led them here. But the further they descended, the more the weight of their quest pressed down on Emma's shoulders. What if this is a mistake? Emma's voice was low, almost hesitant, as she broke the silence between them. Alex glanced back at her, his eyes tired but resolute. "We don't have a choice. If we turn back now, we'll never get the answers. We'll never understand what's happening." "I'm not worried about the answers," Emma replied quietly, her gaze flicking nervously around the darkened tunnel. "I'm worried about what we might find." Alex's expression softened, but the strain was still there. "Me too. But we're in this together. We need to finish this." The words held a sense of finality, a promise that they would see it through, no matter what. Emma nodded, though the unease gnawed at her insides. There was something primal about the facility, something that felt wrong on a deeper level than she could explain. It wasn't just the isolation or the secrecy, it was the feeling that they weren't meant to be here. That whatever waited for them down here had been hidden for a reason. At last, they reached a thick metal door, its surface gleaming in the dim light of their flashlights. A set of symbols adorned the door, etched into the metal in patterns too complex to decipher. The device Alex had been carrying now seemed to hum with purpose in his hands. He placed it against the door's control panel, watching as a series of lights flickered to life. The door buzzed once, then slid open with a soft, grinding noise, revealing a large chamber beyond. Inside was a vast, circular room, its ceiling disappearing into shadow. Large, reinforced windows lined the far wall, and Emma could see the faintest glow of light through the glass. Machines, some of them strange and unfamiliar, hummed with quiet efficiency. Monitors flickered on the walls, displaying streams of data that meant nothing to her, but to Alex. They were a map to something they had been searching for. "This is it," Alex breathed, stepping into the room. His voice held a reverence that sent a shiver down Emma's spine. The archive, the place where they kept everything. Emma's gaze swept over the room, but something about the place felt off, too clean, too sterile, as though it had been preserved for someone else, for something else. She hesitated, but Alex was already walking toward the central console, his fingers flying across the controls with practiced ease. The faint hum of the machinery seemed to intensify as he worked, as though the room itself were waking up, responding to their presence. "What are you looking for?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the mounting tension in her chest. "The records," Alex replied, his eyes glued to the screen in front of him. "The information on everything they erased. On us, on the real history. I think they've been hiding it here all this time. The truth about who we are, about what we were meant to be." As Alex continued to work, Emma moved to one of the large windows, her breath fogging up the glass as she peered into the chamber beyond. What she saw made her stomach tighten in unease. The room behind the glass was filled with rows of containers, each one sealed tight, its contents unknown. They seemed to shimmer faintly in the low light, as though something inside was alive, or perhaps aware. For a moment, she felt as though they were being watched, though the room appeared empty. She pressed her palm against the glass, her fingers trembling slightly as she gazed at the strange containers. Something inside her told her that, whatever was inside those chambers had a connection to their own existence, something they weren't ready to understand. "Alex," she started, but her words faltered. "What's in there?" Alex didn't look up from his screen. "I don't know, but it's part of the records. Whatever they were doing here, whatever they were trying to hide, it's all connected." Emma swallowed hard. There was a gnawing feeling deep in her chest, a feeling that they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. The universe had one rule: don't wake the humans. They had broken that rule, and now, the answers they sought were beginning to reveal themselves, piece by piece. But with every step they took toward the truth, Emma felt a growing sense of dread. They weren't just uncovering secrets, they were unleashing something. As the final set of data began to download, Alex turned to her, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. "I've got it," he said, his voice tinged with both triumph and trepidation. "I know what they did. I know who we were." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "What? What do you mean?" Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared at the screen in silence, as if reading something that shook him to his core. Slowly, he turned back to face her, his expression grave. "We weren't human, Emma," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. "Not in the way we thought. We were something far older, something that was wiped from existence. And these containers, they were the last of us. The last of the species we used to be. The ones who were meant to rule the stars." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The room seemed to close in around her, the reality of what Alex had just said crashing down on her. They've been keeping us in stasis, erasing our memories, suppressing our abilities. We were never meant to be just humans, Emma. We were gods." His voice cracked as he said the word, and the weight of it seemed to hang in the air between them. "Why?" Emma whispered, her mind reeling. "Why would they do that?" Alex shook his head, the answer already clear to him. "Because we were too powerful. We were the first, the original species, and the universe couldn't allow us to know who we were. They couldn't let us reclaim our place at the top. The pieces were falling into place, now slowly, but surely. They weren't just survivors. They weren't just people in search of a forgotten past. They were something more, something dangerous. And the universe had been terrified of what they might do if they remembered. As the final piece of data scrolled across the screen, Emma realized with chilling clarity that their awakening wasn't just an accident. It wasn't just curiosity. It had been planned. They were meant to remember, and now that they had, the universe was going to try to stop them.